Now in the previous session, we have discussed about the Building and Other Construction Workers Act 1996. Now this is the Building and Other Construction Workers Regulation of Employment and Condition of Service Central Rule 1998. So the sections which I have mentioned in the 1996 rule, that is rectified, and with the help of that sections guidelines, these rules are made, right? So in the similar way, the part 1 is nothing but the preliminary, chapter 1, short title, extent and commissioning. So these rules may be called the BOCW Central Rule 1998. They shall apply to the building and other construction work relating to the any establishment in relation to which appropriate government is the central government under this act. So different definitions. So the general definitions are act, then access or egress. So access or egress is nothing but the passageway, corridor, stairs, platforms, ladders and any other means to be used by building worker for normally entering or leaving the workplace or for escaping in case of danger. Then approved, base plate, bay, then brace, bulkhead, Kaizen are the different definitions given under this rule 2. So what is Kaizen? Means an air and watertight chamber in which it is possible for men to work under air pressure greater than the atmospheric pressure at sea level to excavate material below water level. So if you want to work under water or under water level, then you can create air pressure which is more than the atmospheric pressure, and the building worker or the other construction worker can work in this type of chamber that is called as Kaizen. So this is the definition given under this rule. Then cofferdam is another definition which is not known to the common people. So cofferdam means a structure constructed entirely or in part below water level or below the level of the water table in the ground and intended to provide a place for work that is free of water. So it is a structure below the water level and below the water table also. So it is a water free place under water table or water level, and it is called as cofferdam. Then competent person, we know the general definition of the competent person, that is the same and it is applicable to the building and other construction worker rule. Then compressed air, we know that definition. Construction site, we already discussed about this establishment in the previous session. Then conveyor. So conveyor means a mechanical device used in building or other construction work for transport of building material, articles or packages or solid bulk from one point to another. So to convey the material from one point to another, the mechanical device which is used is called as conveyor. Then the danger is the general definition. Then decanting means the rapid decompression of persons in a manlock to atmospheric pressure at sea level, followed promptly by their decompression or recompression in a decant lock, where they are then decompressed according to the appropriate decompression table in accordance with the approved decompression procedures. So whatever the decompression and recompression procedure is going to follow, that is called as decanting process. Then demolition work. So we have already discussed about this demolition work in one of the session. The work incidental or connected with the total or partial dismantling or razing of building or a structure other than a building and includes the removing or dismantling of machines or other equipments. So if you want to go for a dismantling of the machines or other equipments or building material, then that work is called as demolition. Then excavation means the removal of earth, rock or other material in connection with construction of demolition work. So excavation equipments, excavation activities are all discussed in one of the session, that is construction activities. Then false works means the structural supports and bracing for frameworks or forms. Then flashpoint we have already discussed in the safety of chemical. Then frame or modular scaffold we have discussed in the ladders and scaffold structures. Then guardrails, hazards, hazardous substance, high pressure air, then independent tied scaffold, then ledger, lifting appliances. So in the lifting appliances at the construction site, we can use crane, hoist derrick, winch, gene pole, shear legs, jack, pulley block or other equipment used for lifting materials, object or building workers. So all these appliances or the equipments are called as lifting appliances. Though the lifting may be of building worker, lifting may be of object, or lifting may be of any type of material. Then lifting gear, then lock attendant, low pressure air, magazine, man lock, material hoist, material lock, medical lock, the national standards. So BIS is going to use in this rules also, that is why it is a national standard. Then outrigger means a structure projecting beyond the facade of a building with the inner end being anchored and includes a cantilever or other support, that is called as outrigger. Then plant or equipment, pressure plant, put log, responsible person, that is nothing but the employer. Then reveal tie, then right angle coupler, rock bolt, roofing bracket, safety screen, then safety working load, scaffold, then schedule, segment, service shaft, shield, then sole plate, sound or good construction, sound or good material, standard safe operating practices, steel rib, then suspended scaffold, testing establishment, tie, toe board, transom, trestle scaffold, then tubular scaffold, tunnel, underground, vehicle, working chamber, working platform, working pressure, workplace. So these are the different definition which involved in the rule number 2. So we can't discuss each and every definition because we have to overlook all the rules and regulation under this central rule 1998. Then rule number 3 gives you the idea regarding the interpretation of words not defined. So if some words are not defined under these definitions, then we can interpret these words by the expertise. Then rule number 4 gives you the savings, which is already discussed in the Act 1996. Then chapter 2 gives you the idea regarding the responsibilities and duties of employers, architects, projects, engineers, designers, building workers, etc. So whatever the manpower who is involved in this establishment or the activities, all are responsible for a particular work. So all these responsibilities are given under this chapter 2. So rule number 5 gives the idea regarding the duties and responsibilities of the employer, employees, and others. So to comply all these requirements which is given under the rule should be completed by the employer, and all the guidelines for compliance of these rules should be followed by the employees. So all the guidelines should be followed by the employees, which is given by the employer. And employer must have the knowledge about this compliance, which is given under these different rules of this Central Rule 1998. Then contractor who is undertaking any of the operations or works to which these rules apply appoint any artisan, tradesman or other person to perform any work or service under a contract of service. It shall be the duty of the contractor to comply with such of the requirements of these rules by these persons, that may be an artisan, tradesman or other persons. So if there is a contractor in the establishment, then this is the responsibility of the contractor to complete all these activities which is mentioned in these rules, and that should be completed through these persons like artisan, tradesman or other persons. Then the employee's duty is to comply with the requirements and to cooperate to the contractor, to cooperate to the employer. And the employer's duty to provide the different facilities which is required by the employees for the safe work, for the safe practices, and also to provide the different facilities for lifting the material, lifting the objects or the different mechanisms. That may be a transport equipment, that may be a vehicles or other things. Then it is the responsibility of the employer to maintain the latrines, urinals, washing facilities and canteen in a clean and hygienic conditions. Then it is the responsibility of the employer to abide by the dated fixed notified by him for the payment of wages for a period in accordance with these rules. So it is the duty or the responsibility of the employer to provide the wages time to time, that is the payment of wages in a particular period which is already decided between the employer and employees. Then it is also a responsibility of the employer to pay to the contractor within a time period. Then it is a duty of the employer to ensure about the lifting appliances, lifting gear, earth moving equipment, transport equipments or vehicles in the building and other construction work undertaken by him conforms to the requirement. Then there are some provisions like testing and examination, inspection of such these equipments that is used for the earth moving, that is used for the transportation, that is used for the lifting purpose, etc. So all these vehicles and equipment should be tested, examined or inspected by the competent person time to time, and that should be observed by the employee. Then rule number 6 gives you the idea regarding the responsibilities of the architect, project engineers and designers. So whatever the establishment, building or other construction work, that should be designed by taking the views of the safety aspects, the health aspects and the long-term views. So designer is a key person because before starting the actual construction activity, the designer should think about all these aspects and mainly to the safety of the workers, that is safety of the building workers. Then after designing the safety establishment, the project engineers and architects role is to provide the guidelines how to do this activity, how to complete all this establishment, what is the time for completing all these activities, what are the facilities provided for doing all these activities. That may be a material movement, that may be a construction activity, that may be a building worker movement, that may be an object movement, that may be a transport facility, etc. So all the things which are covered under this architect and project engineer, so all these professionals should think about the building workers' health and safety first. So they should also provide the guidelines for handling the hazardous materials which involved in the construction activity. Then rule number 7 is regarding the responsibilities of the person in the service of the state government and the board. So the persons who are involved in this activity also have the responsibility to follow the state government guidelines, central government guidelines, board guidelines, or the guidelines, that is safety guidelines provided by these designers, project engineers, architect, or the employer. Then rule number 8 is the duties and responsibility of the workers. So we have already mentioned that we must go through the trainings of handling the different equipments, that may be a lifting appliances, lifting gear, lifting devices, transport, etc. Then worker should cooperate to the employer, worker should cooperate to the project engineer, architect, or the designer for following all the guidelines given by them. Then the no building worker shall, unless duly authorized or except in case of necessity, remove or interface with any fencing. So worker should not interfere the activities or the fencing facilities, gangways, gear, ladders, hatch covering, life-saving appliances, lighting, or other things whatsoever required by the act and the rules. So if these facilities are provided by the employer, if these are the essential facilities as per the act and rule is concerned, then worker should not interfere all these facilities unless and until it is duly authorized or in case of emergency only. Then every building worker shall use only means of access provided in the accordance with these rules. It shall be the duty of building worker to keep the latrines, urinals, washing points, canteens, and other facilities provided by the employer for securing his welfare in clean and hygienic conditions. So it is also the responsibility of the building workers to maintain all these facilities in a hygienic condition. Then rule number 9 is a exemption. So some points, some facilities, some provisions may be the exemption case, but it should be decided by the central or the state government authority only. So these exemptions should be decided by the authorities only. Then part 2 of this central rule 1998 is nothing but a central advisory committee registration of establishment. Then chapter 3 under this part 2 is central advisory committee. So we have already discussed about this central advisory committee in the Act 1996. It is a similar in this rule number 10, that is a chairperson of the central government, then 3 members of the parliament, of whom 2 shall be elected by the House of People and 1 shall be selected by the Council of State. Then Director General, member of ex officio, Director General, Labour of Welfare, Ministry of Labour, New Delhi, member. The Director General Factory, Advice Service and Labour Institutes, Mumbai, that is DG Fastly, member. 4 persons out of whom at least 1 shall be a woman to be nominated by the central government representing the building workers. Then 4 persons to be nominated by the central government for representing the employers connected with the building and other construction work. 2 persons to be nominated by the central government for representing, one from the National Level Association of Architects or Engineers and one from an accident insurance institutions. So the guidelines for deciding these committee members is given in the Act 1996, and the detailed guidelines for a specific member or the number of members, restrictions, and from where these numbers should be decided or from where these members should be decided. All these detailed guidelines are covered under this rule number 10. Then terms of office. So the terms means duration. So chairperson should be decided for 3 years, and each member, that is from the rule number 10, again decided the duration of 3 years only. So the chairperson and all the members are generally elected for the 3 years. Then rule number 12, that is resignation. So in case of any unplanned activity or due to some reason, if a member wants to give a resignation from that committee, then he or she can do that activity, and in place of that member the vacancy is going to create, and these vacancies can be filled by the central or state government. Then rule number 30, cessation of membership. So if any member of the Central Advisory Committee, not being an ex officio member, fails to attend 3 consecutive meetings of such committee without obtaining the leave of the chairperson of such committee, for such absence he shall cease to be member of such committee. So these membership can be rejected, cancelled, if you are not going to attend 3 consecutive meetings without any permission. Then rule number 40 is the disqualification for membership. So whatever the criteria or eligibility is mentioned in the rule number 10, that should be followed. If it is not proven or it is not the case, then the membership qualification is rejected. Rule number 15 gives you the idea regarding the removal from membership. So you can remove any member if you find there is issues or illegal issues related to that member, then you can remove the member. Rule number 16, that is manner of filling vacancies. So we have already discussed that in case of resignation, in case of removal of any member from the committee, you can fill these vacancies as per as the central government authorities and chairperson of the committee is concerned. Rule number 17, staff of Central Advisory Committee. So you can appoint the staff, that is supporting staff, under the chairperson under the different members. Then rule number 18, allowances of these members. So central and state government is going to decide about the traveling allowance, about the other allowances which can be given to these members. Then rule number 19 gives you the idea regarding the disposal of business. Then rule number 20 gives you the idea regarding the meetings of these central advisory committees. So there shall be at least one meeting in a 6 months. That is the basic condition required. So you can go more than the one meeting in 6 months also, but that is the minimum condition. Rule number 21 gives you the idea regarding the notice of meetings and list of businesses. So whatever the meetings points are there, whatever the dates and timings and the location decided by the Central Advisory Committee, that should be communicated to all the members with the help of the notice. Then quorum, no business shall be transacted at any meeting of the Central Advisory Committee unless at least 6 members of such committee are present. In that meeting, which shall be included at least one member of parliament. So that is the condition At least 6 members should be present for that meeting, and at least 1 member of parliament should be there. Then and then only these decisions can be communicated to the other establishment or the employers. Then chapter 4 is related to the registration of establishment. So this point is also discussed in the act, and the detailed guidelines are given under these rules under chapter 4. So 23 related to the manner of making application for registration of establishment. So you can apply with the help of a standard or prescribed format for the registration of this establishment. Then certificate of registration can be given by the board after verification of all the eligibility criteria and the document required for the registration. Then payment of additional fees and amendment of register. So after the registration, if you are not completed or not paid the total amount or renewal of this amount, then you can pay this additional fees, and you can also pay the additional fees after the amendment of this registration. So sometimes the registration fees is also going to change after that amendment. Then conditions of registrations. The certificate of registration shall be non-transferable. So the employer's name is clearly mentioned. Whatever the type of work or the establishment is should be clearly mentioned. So this certificate is not going to transfer to any person, not going to transfer for other establishment. The number of workmen employed as building worker in any establishment shall not on any day exceed the maximum number specified in the certificates. So you have to mention the number of workmen employed for that activity for that establishment. So you are not permitted to go beyond that number, save as provided in these rules. The fees paid for the grant registration certificate shall be non-refundable. So it is a non-transferable, then it is non-refundable, and you have to do the activities in this establishment with reference to the maximum number of building workers allowed by the board. Then fees for this registration is up to 100 workers, 100 rupees, more than 100 up to 500, 500 rupees, more than 500 workers, then it is 1000 rupees. Then chapter 5 is related to the appeals, copies of orders, payment of fees, etc. So you can file the appeal before the appellate order if you are having some objection, if you are having some doubts, if you are deciding some points, or if you are going to give some suggestions, you can go for the appeal with reference to this rule number 28. Then 29, failure to appear on the date of hearing. So if you have appeal for something else, and if the date is decided by the concerned authority, so if you are going to not going to appear for that hearing, then the appellant does not appear, the appellate officer may dismiss the appeal for default of appearance of the applicant. So if you are not attended that hearing, then your appeal is automatically dismissed by the officer. Then rule number 30, that is restoration of the appeal. So in case of dismissal by the officer of that appeal, then again it can be restored for considering some of the specific cases. Then again, hearing of appeal, you have to attend this hearing, you have to confirm and reverse or varying the orders appealed against and determine the different points, and you have to mention the different decisions which is discussed in the hearing of appeal. Then you can ask for the copy of order of registration order in the appeal itself. Then regarding the payment of fees, you can ask the fees which is already paid, then the fee receipts and the registration fees, etc., with reference to this rule number 33. Then part 3 is related to the safety and health. So that is the important part as far as the building workers are concerned and as far as this rule is concerned. So in the chapter 4, there are general provisions. That is 34 is related to the excessive noise, vibrations, etc. An employer shall ensure at a construction site of a building or other construction work that adequate measures are taken to protect building workers against the harmful effects of excessive noise or vibration at such construction site, and the noise level in no case exceeds the limit laid down in Schedule 6 annexed to these rules. So whatever the limits laid down in the Schedule 6 of these rules, we have to follow these maximum permissible um, decibels limit, which is decided in the schedule, and this is the responsibility of the employer to ensure about the maximum permissible limits under this Schedule 6. Then fire protection. So this is again the responsibility of the employer, that there should not be any such type of fire incidences, and in case of such fire incidences, then you have to protect the building worker from these types of fire hazards with the help with the help of fire extinguishing equipment. And this fire extinguisher should be available in plenty of amount, in sufficient quantities at that site, and adequate water supply should be provided as per as the national standards are concerned, as per as the BIS is concerned. And some people who are trained in these types of fire extinguishment uh, trainings should be provided, should be available to operate these types of extinguishment equipment at that site. So all these types of equipments and the trained people should be available at that site for protecting from the fire. Then emergency action plans. So as far as the different hazards which are available are concerned, then we must go for the planning of the emergency action plan to handle the emergencies like fire and explosion, collapse of lifting appliances and transport equipment, collapse of building, sheds or structures, then gas leakage or spillage of dangerous goods or chemicals, drowning of building workers, sinking of vessels, and landslides getting building workers buried, floods, storms, and other natural calamities is prepared and submitted for the approval of the Director General. So we must think of all these types of hazards, all these types of natural calamities or the dangerous incidents, and with the view of these incidents, we must plan for the emergency action planning to handle these types of emergencies. Then 37 rule, fencing of motors. So all the motors which are used at the construction site and having different parts, that may be a cog wheels, chains, friction gearing, flywheels, shafting, dangerous and moving parts machinery, all should be fenced or lagged. So this fencing of dangerous parts of machinery is not removed while such machinery is in motion. So to avoid these types of accidents due to this revolving machinery, we must apply fencing to these types of machinery. No part of any machinery which is in motion and which is not securely fenced is examined, lubricated, adjusted or repaired except by a person skilled for such examination, lubrication, adjustment or repairs. Machine parts are clean when such machines are stopped. So repairing, maintenance, examination, testing, all these types of activities should be done. Then rule number 38, lifting and carrying of excessive weights. So these guidelines are given under these rules which are not mentioned under the act. So adult man can lift the maximum of 55 kg, then adult woman 30 kg, adolescent 30 kg, adolescent female 20 kg. So this is the maximum weight load can lift by the adult man or woman or adolescent male or female as far as this rule number 38 is concerned. Then 39 is related to the health and safety policy. So there should be a health and safety policy for that establishment, and that is the responsibility of the employer again. So all the commitments related to the safety and health should be mentioned in that policy. All the organizational arrangements to carry out all these points which are mentioned in the policy should be given, and the responsibility at different levels of hierarchy should be mentioned in that policy. Who is the responsible, or who is the principal employer, who is the contractor, subcontractor, transporter, or other agencies involved in the building or other construction work. So all these members should be involved for framework in the safety and health policy. Techniques and methods for assessment of risk to safety, health and environment, and remedial measures therefore should be thought of while making these types of policies. All the arrangements for training of building workers, trainers, supervisors, or other persons engaged in the construction work should be thought of while designing these types of policies. So this policy should be referred, and it should be effective, it should be communicated to all the employees, to all the subcontractor or contractor, all the employees which are directly or indirectly involved in the establishment. So this is the responsibility of the employee to make such policies. Then rule number 40 is related to the dangerous and harmful environment. So in case if there is a dangerous machine parts, dangerous operations, or oxygen deficient atmosphere, if there is a lacking of natural ventilation, natural light, or if there is a possibility of carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide gases, then it is called as dangerous or harmful environment. If you are going to handle some hazardous substances, hazardous chemicals at that establishment, then it is also called as hazardous environment. If there is a chances for handling some processes in the confined spaces, then it is also called as dangerous environment. So generally the confined spaces may be excavation work under the water table, under the ground, or some special cases where it is called as oxygen deficient atmosphere. In some cases, some workers have to working at height where the oxygen deficient atmosphere may create. So all these cases are nothing but the dangerous and harmful environment, dangerous environment. So the facilities for the building workers should be provided by the employer to handle these types of dangerous environment and some places. So rule number 41, that is overhead protections. So in some of the construction activity, there may be a case that is overhead protections, that is rule 1, sub rule 1, shall not be less than 2 meters wide and shall be erected at a height not more than 5 meters above the base of the building, and the outer edge of such overhead protection shall be 150 millimeters higher than the inner edge therefore or thereof, or shall be erected at the angle of not more than 20 degrees to its horizontal sloping into the buildings. So there should be overhead protection given to the building workers, especially when we are working at the height of 5 meters from the base of the building. So this is the essential or compulsory condition, and in case of 2 meters wide or in case of more than 5-meter height, overhead protection is essential condition. The employer shall ensure to the building and other construction work in that area exposed to the risk falling material, articles or object is roped off or cordon off or otherwise suitably guarded from the inadvertent entry of the persons other than the building workers. So all these facilities should be provided, all these observations, inspections should be done by the supervisor, by the concerned person for having these types of work, that is overhead protection. Then slipping, tripping, cutting, drowning and falling hazards. So at the construction site, these are the normal cases, these are the normal hazards. So there are some conditions where slipping action may be there, tripping action may be there, some cutting edges are also available at that site, and in case of water or in case of the construction site which is nearby water bodies, that may be a dam, that may be a lakes, that may be a river, that may be a other small ponds, but where the water is there, then drowning may be a possibility. And if you are going to work at height, then there may be a falling hazards. So all the safety measures should be taken into account while doing all the construction activities by taking into account all these types of hazards. Then dust, gases and fumes may be a different types of hazards which is directly related to the health. So it is a health hazards. So all the precautions should be taken while doing the activities in this atmosphere where the dust or gases or fumes are available. So there may be some provisions like personal protective equipment, that may be a dust mask, that may be a respiratory type of mask, that may be a airline respirator, and that may be a case of self-contained breathing apparatus in case of oxygen deficient atmosphere. Then there may be a chance where the corrosive substances are available at that establishment. So we have to take care about the corrosive substances by applying the anti-corrosive paints, anti-corrosive coatings, or we have to provide these corrosive substances in the places where the possibility of corrosion or the rate of corrosion should be minimized. Then eye protection, so where the chipping operation, cutting operation, welding operation, grinding operations are there in the at the construction site. So these are the operations where there are chances of having the hazards to the eyes, and that is why the personal protective equipment like goggles are provided, and this type of goggles is mainly depends on the type of activity or operation is carried out. Then head protection and other protective apparel. So hard hats, helmets should be provided to all the workers for protecting the head. Then the employer should provide the acid proof or the alkali proof hand gloves or the shoes, etc., where the corrosive substances are there, where the acids are going to handle or some hazardous substances are going to handle. So all these hazards should be taken into account, and on the basis of these hazards, employer should provide these types of PPEs. In case of there is a chance of electrical hazards, electrical shocks, or if the overhead lines are there at that establishment, then there is a chances of electric shocks or electrical leakage. So for that purpose, employer should provide the protection from these electrical hazards. So there may be a anti-static tools provision, there may be a anti-shock electrical that is anti-shock hand gloves, or some soles are anti-static soles which are provided in some of the safety shoes, So all these facilities which are having the electrical proof properties should be provided by the employer. Then in case of more vehicles at that establishment site, then vehicular traffic should be controlled by the employer, inspector, or the concerned person with reference to the Central Motor Vehicle Act and Rule. Then stability of the structure should be tested, should be examined with reference to the BIS standards. Then there should be a sufficient light arrangement, that is illumination, for the passageways, for the ingress and the different passages like passageways, stairways, landing, etc. So where the entry and exits are there, so on that entry and exit provisions, illumination or sufficient illumination should be given. Then stacking of materials. So some of the materials should be stacked, and these are the required provisions for that site, that some metals or some stones, some crushing materials or some cements, etc. All the materials should be stacked in a particular manner by the employer in a particular place to avoid the losses of these materials. Then disposal of these debris. If the debris are going to form at that construction site, then these debris are handled and disposed of by a method which does not cause danger to the safety of persons. So in the safe way, you have to handle these or dispose of these debris. Debris are not allowed to accumulate so as to constitute a hazard. Debris are kept sufficiently moist to bring down the dust within the permissible limits. Debris are not thrown